I'll go since I'm the one streaming. So, obviously, people that are watching this on my stream know who I am. My name is Silver, previous actual relevant competitive player.
My name is Chara. I currently play for Climb, which is a top-level team right now, and I make content on YouTube, which a good amount of people are probably watching this from here, and I stream on Twitch, and I'm on Twitter at ProChara for both, and I play Rapid and Octobrush. So yeah, that's me.
I'm Ice. I play on Starburst, which is a top level Splatoon team, and I play Charger, and my Twitter is @_Angel22_.
Okay, so the whole purpose of this is we're going to be doing some discussion and predictions for Splatoon 3. Obviously, we don't have a whole lot. The trailer was like less than 3 minutes, but there's a whole lot that we can gather from it, and then a lot of things that we can, just we're basically just going to be spending most of this time talking about what we felt about it and what we hope that they go in and what we think they'll go in based on what we've seen. So I think the first thing is obviously going to be what did we think of it? And I'm going to start for this one. And I actually did not expect it to actually be Splatoon 3. When I first started, I assumed it was going to be a spin-off. Mostly because at that start where it had like after the customization ends and it just goes to like a 2.5D view, I thought it was going to be like a side scroller like shooter. And so I did not expect it. And then when they actually showed that it was Splatoon 3, I actually was pretty excited.
I mean, for me, I thought it was probably going to be DLC as well. I thought it was more just going to be like another Octo expansion thing, but for jam and run, and maybe like having a kind of content update and restart of their Splatoon 2 content burst, and I'm glad it's a sequel. I think it's what we kind of need. I do want Splatoon 2's lifespan to last a bit longer because the meta and the balance competitive is obviously very good right now, but I think in like a year or so's time, it'll be much more time to move on to the next game. But I don't think the release or trailer, any of it could have been timed any better than it has. It's probably the best timing I could have asked for.
At first, I didn't think I agree with Charger. I think that Unreal has like a lifespan, and like I think that I don't want to update but I do agree that the release of the new year is actually appropriate.
Yeah, so I think with giving it like a year out, I think that is perfectly appropriate. Granted, this is another thing we'll go into a bit later. We also don't have any idea when it'll actually come out, so that's also a thing that's up in the air. Okay, I'm gonna... People are saying you guys are quiet, so I'm gonna fix that a little bit. Alright, so people that are watching, let me know if this sounds a little better. I raised them up quite a bit. But yeah, so I think the first thing we're going to be talking about is our speculation based on what we saw. So again, we didn't see a whole ton, but we have enough. We see stuff like the weapons, we saw the bow, we saw what looks like a new version of the Inkzuka. We got to see that first map. We got to see quite a bit actually for only being like less than 3 minutes. And I think the first thing I think we're all, and there's memes about it already. I think the first thing we're gonna expect is every game on launch day is just gonna be the bow. I don't think anyone's gonna be playing anything other than the bow on launch day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be like Splatoon 2 dualies all over again. Like day one, everyone was just playing dualies. It's probably going to be like the same thing, both bow this time.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what the bow will actually be, because from the footage of it, it looks like it's gonna function similar enough to like a charter that it's pretty much just a slayer and doesn't paint. Because at least from the footage we have, and it did preface it's not in-game footage, but it looked like it just did not paint. Maybe the actual shots themselves paint, but the actual like paint coming out after they fired the bow was like non-existent. So I wonder if it's going to be like purely like an aggressive, just like Slayer weapon that doesn't paint, or maybe the painting isn't just like that was just the visual of it, and we don't actually. That's not the real indication of what its paint will actually be like.
I mean, the bow looks cool, but based on like what we saw, even though it's like you said, like very short, it looks like it has a charge, but then its paint, like it shoots multiple shots for starters, but it doesn't look like it paints all that much with those multiple shots. It looks like it actually paints less than a charger would, for example, like a charger straight line. So I don't know like what that means in terms of like the amount of bullets that it has or how much damage it can do.
So I've actually looked at like the bow mechanics, a lot of it, like and a bunch of times just watching back the clips that had the bow in it. And it seemed like it's definitely a charger variant. It has a ton of things that are similar, like the shot's not painting as much in the paint. And like charge having a glow to it, which actually you didn't see on the scope chargers, but I'll get to that later. But it seems to just be, in my eyes, I think this is going to be the least different type class. Not that it won't have its uniqueness, but I think this is very much going to fall under, like, yeah, it's just a different kind of sniper. Like, I think the shot velocity will be less, because it's a bow. The shots seem to curve, which can give them, like, different angles that maybe Charger can't hit, while still having to be accurate. It has a multi-shot, and seems like it can be vertical or horizontal. It can jump, and when it jumps, it goes like max height, which Chargers don't have. So it's like they have different utility, but they're both still snipers. It's just that Chargers are more limited, but have more distance and more like shot speed. But bows have a lot more actual utility at the cost of like paint and shot speed and maybe range.
And it looked like, at least from the angle we had, it looks like the shots also like fall down, like the arrows like lose height and drop in altitude. So I would expect to see some like people trying to go for like some trick shots where they're like shooting the arrow straight up and watching them fall down and kill someone on the other side of a wall, stuff like that. That would be interesting to see. I definitely think there is some sort of those are like something like that. I'm definitely interested to see how exactly it's going to function. And then we had the new movement tech there, the roll and squid form, and then the wall jumping and stuff like that. I actually saw Chara talking about this on Twitter, and I actually saw people in Academy talking about this specifically in the Brush channel. Stuff like that will actually be super, super helpful for weapons that struggle when it comes to engaging. Weapons like the Octobrush, weapons like the Sploosh, anything that has like super short range, that its main problem is engaging on someone, that stuff really helps those kinds of weapons. And I think that's probably what they're aiming for, to give some utility to things that really, really desperately lack from their kit or the weapon not being designed around that.
Yeah, the only concern I would have with it though is I don't know if it's gonna be like something that, for example, like once you do one of those like squid jumps, that there's some time before you can do another one, or if it's just going to be something that you can just spam by like pressing a button, like for example, like a dually roll, but you just do that while you're in the ink as an example. I'm not sure, but I do agree that because even in this game you can see like blasters, rollers, sploosh, even like T-Tech sometimes, they have a really hard time against midlines in the game, and especially moving around. Blasters and rollers especially, where they have no paint, so I think that's just an absolute, not buff to them, but an indirect buff to them as well.
It seems like it was designed for that.
I think the roll has like a lot of different designs, so I'm probably gonna go on for this for a bit, but I think one of the main things in terms of Isis point of buffing against midlines, while this game has good balance, one of the big problems with it is pure slay heavy short range weapons just get annihilated by mid range weapons. And Nintendo's like tried to make those weapons better, like they've reduced the ending and startup lag of a lot of different weapons, for example. But I think the idea of giving different approach and movement options is a great thing to help fix that, because it gives these shorter range, like you said, approach tools. I think the other thing it can help is slower weapons, specifically against bombs. Because I think it's kind of just been a reality that we've gone so accustomed to that if you play like a slow weapon like a range blaster or an explosher or a dynamo, and bombs just destroy you, and they still will be really good against those weapons. But to me, this is like, okay, now you have an option to like, any weapon has a nice option to jump out of the way of a bomb, even if you don't have like full turf on the floor. Like if a range blaster doesn't have paint on the floor and there's a bomb at its feet, it can't paint and then move out of the way like a T-Tech can. But now, maybe this roll tech has helped it. And then the other two things I want to note about the roll tech is one thing is speculation, but I think you will likely have to be traveling at full speed to activate this squid roll, because when you do see it used, it's always someone who's already swimming at max speed.
I
think it's something that you can't do immediately, so I think that might be something. And the second thing is we also know that you can shoot out of it, which I think gives even more utility for these kind of weapons, because like brushes can then like flick and then start rolling out of it immediately. Brellas can shield out of it. T-Techs can like, well, T-Techs can just shoot, but obviously it's being able to shoot while executing the roll gives it way more utility because it's not just a movement option. You can use it and shoot.
I think it's a good idea that you like pointed out that you can only like use it if you're at full speed. Because while I do think it's a really great mechanic, I can still see an issue of it becoming where like now everything's incredibly hard to hit if otherwise that wasn't the case, if that makes more sense.
Yeah,
Like
especially if it's not gonna like consume ink, because it definitely seems like it's probably not, just because everyone's doing it out of ink, so I don't think it's gonna consume anything. So it definitely would have to either be some sort of like speed cap that you need to hit in order to do it, or there's a massive cooldown between the usage.
I think that just makes the most sense in terms of like balance, because it gives the shorter range weapons mobility to like actually play the game and move, but it also doesn't limit like slower firing weapons like Charger, for example, or even the bow from being able to accurately hit shots because they can't spam it.
Yeah, I would also like to note, like, the squid jump that we see has a very clear downside of lag. Like, when you get in the air, you descend for a long time and you're predictable. I think the squid roll is going to have pretty much the exact same thing, where it's like, after that actual jump happens, the descent to the ground is probably, the part they aren't showing is probably a bit slower and predictable, so it can be punished. Like, it gives you a kind of predictable arc. To me, it's just like a weird sideways jump. Like, it's nice for some options, but it's still predictable and punishable once you get used to reading people doing it.
I definitely feel like it seems as if it really is designed, at least like the jump, like the squid jump there, it seems as if they saw what people were doing with substrafing and decided to go, screw it, let's just make it a thing. Let's like take this thing that people have found and this like trick that people have found, and let's actually incorporate it into the game. Because I think it's good for what you mentioned, like using it for like getting out of the way of bombs, getting the way out of fire, using it as like an engage tool. It's definitely, I'm interested to see what sort of mechanics and what people can actually do with it. I'm interested to see if some of this stuff will lead to some of these tricks that we have found on Master, like you can jump from certain angles at certain speeds, or the infamous dually rolls where you could like just warp up walls and stuff like that when that was happening. I want to see if they're going to design the maps around a way where they know, like, hey, people are going to try this, so we need to make sure that this sort of collision, this sort of things don't exist here. Or if they just fully embrace it and make it to where, like, hey, these exist, but you have to be, like, super good. You have to be really, knowledgeable of this tech to be able to actually get any real good use out of it like that. But I think the next thing would probably be the Inkzuka, or what looks very much like the Inkzuka. I haven't looked at the tweets from NOA or Splatoon JP, but people were telling me that it's already been confirmed that there's some of the stuff that's mixed between Splatoon 1 and it's been reworked. So it is definitely some variation of the Inkzuka, reworked and redone into something else. And I'm very interested to see what exactly this rework does. Because it looks like it is a more focused and skill shot version of the Inkzuka, which I think is something this game has always really needed, is more skill shot stuff. But we'll have to wait and see Because I thought
Yeah,
from
get it.
what I looked at, it was like a single shot, but it's apparently a multi-shot.
Yeah, it has like 3 bullets that seem to like go around each other, but it also seems to arc, if that makes sense. Because when they showed it in the trailer going across the map, it didn't go in a straight line where you shot it; it would fall off.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is better because Inkzooka in Splatoon 1, although like we can argue at the end game wasn't as good due to the meta, it was still a single fire shot that went really fast and really far. So it was hard for yourself to counter it. But I think this is a good way of like, it's a good rework in my opinion. It looks like it's not better, but more utility and you can be more creative with it, as well as like you said, we need more skill in this game compared to just mindlessly spamming specials.
Yeah, from what I saw from the Splatoon JP, you shoot like 3 blasts that explode on impact, including if you can hit directs with it, basically. It's just a thing with it as well, and those can one-shot, because we saw it on the range blaster user. 1 second. So, I think this is kind of a combination thing, because the shots are, I mean, they're not identical to inkjet shots, but they have that kind of property. Like, they're more of a blast like an inkjet has.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if we're going to start to see more of these combination specials, because the laser things we see, if I'm right, and I've said this 1,000 times, but I think the lasers come from the crab, which is a deployable. So if that's what it is, then that makes, or if the rays come from some kind of object, then that's a mix of whale and ray. It targets players, but it's not a control thing, it's something you put down. If that's a combination of Stingray and Killer Whale, and Zook is a combination of Inkzooka and Inkjet, then I think we can expect other Splatoon specials in this game to be combinations. I don't think all of them will. For example, we know Tenna missiles are in the game from one of the Nintendo of America screenshots that had them in the air. I don't know if that was intended or not, but we know, like, for example, Tenna and Echo aren't being combined. Maybe launching the missiles will locate people like an Echo or something, but some specials might be just directly one or the other, and others might be combined. So I think that can lead to just a lot of speculation on Splatoon 3 special ideas before even going into brand new ones. It's like, how are they going to combine existing specials, or are they going to combine them, and are they going to take some from each game?
Yeah, I want to see I really hope they don't add another invincibility to Splatoon. And if they do, I really want it to be how Bubbler was in the first game, where it's more team-based than anything. Like, you have to be next to your teammates, you have to be smart when you use it, you can't just panic pop it. And I feel like Splatoon as a whole, invincibilities don't fit as much as they should anymore, I think.
I think
Yeah.
it was something I talked about in Splatoon 1. The biggest problem with invincibilities is that their design is basically they're designed as a failsafe and protection for lower level players. In fact, Nogami actually said that in an interview about Bubbler, that its design was specifically geared towards players that can't win fights but want to just keep painting. So they created Bubbler so they can keep painting and not have to worry about losing fights. The problem is when you design stuff like that, you have to account for the fact that it's accessible to everybody. And the moment you make that stuff accessible to everyone, that stuff's going to get abused. And what do you know? It got abused. And then they tried to dial it back with Ink Armor, but the problem is Ink Armor, it's not an invincibility, but it affects time to kill. And it is essentially the same problem. When you affect time to kill, it can be abused.
Yes,
Garmin was also just the case where like it was entirely cross map now as well. So your teammates just directly got a buff from you not even being next to them in the first place.
Yeah, I think armor, like, I like the idea of reducing time to kill and being similar to Bubbler. Like, I actually don't think those things are a problem. I think the problem is outside of those two aspects, they basically got rid of the things that Bubbler got right. Like the idea that you had to chaining to people, reducing duration, making it more predictable for approaches. Like, even if Bubbler was broken, it had downsides and you had to use it well. Armor chains to literally everyone everywhere at the same time and last 6 seconds. It's like, the amount of depth that Bubbler did have in terms of competitive use was almost completely fucking obliterated with armor. So if we see a combination of that, I think this is the easiest one to do. have it be the HP thing like armor, but have the chaining mechanic be like Bubbler.
I definitely think it was also something they did eventually fix at the end, where they added knockback to Bubbler and Kraken, where at the beginning they didn't have that. That was definitely a change they needed to make. But it does make it to where those specials, while those specials at the start were super oppressive, they became more worthless in a way, in that you could, it became a thing of videos of people taming krakens, just keeping them basically stationary, or people pushing away bubblers off the map and stuff like that. It made it to where there was more counterplay, and so the fact that they were invincibilities was frustrating, but it became less of a problem as people got better. The problem is that ink armor, with all the nerfs, it's fundamentally problematic. It is it should have had something where it should have been AoE based. Like, yeah, it shouldn't have activated cross map. It should be people next to you get the armor, or make it to where the farther someone is, the less potent their armor is. Something like that. Its design itself is problematic. And I would hope that they've realized that stuff like that is only going to get abused. If they want to have some way of making it to where like new players can get some sort of assistance, not going to get like totally shredded, they need to find a way that they just need to find a way to actually balance it better than what they've been doing, because it has not been working out.
I think the more we think about it, like, there's definitely options for them to balance things. So I'm not sure if like armor is their way of saying short range have an even greater tool for like pushing in. But as we saw with this game, armor just made mid lines completely able to wall out short range. If anything, it was like the opposite effect that they intended, if that was their intention. And I just think honestly they shouldn't include something like armor or bubbler unless it's incredibly AoE based, because like you said, it's just going to naturally get abused even if their intention isn't for that, because armor right now is a must pick. Every team you see winning either has one armor, and in more cases they have double.
Yeah, to me, it's way easier to turn Bubbler into a balanced armor than it is to turn armor into a balanced Bubbler. So in terms of the rework for that, I would rather them just go with the Bubbler path and make it like armor, because I think we're going to get one of those two. But I would just much rather have it, because Bubbler just feels really easy. Just like, okay, maybe it has some more activation time, and then it tanks HP like armor. But then other than that, it has the same Bubbler qualities. So, bigger hitbox makes it easy to remove the armor. It pushes you back still. You can see it easily, and it'll lose duration depending on who you chain it to. It's so easy to just keep everything Bubbler has besides the invincibility and instant activation. Reworking armor is still going to feel too much like armor to me. Like, I think Bubbler is just so much better designed that it's like, just give it the armor properties besides the invincibility and the armor, invincibility and instant activation, and you have a really well-designed special already. But I also think, yeah, I think in terms of armor, I think it helped mid lines, because it allowed mid lines to just be aggressive on backlines, and mid lines being able to take a backline shot is going to be way easier against a backline than short range weapons being able to take a backline shot. Like, I think armor mostly just helps mid lines, which is why there's so fucking many of them in comms.
And we touched on it a bit earlier. I think when the dualies were added and the rolls and the dashes, I think that's what really contributed to the midline oppression. Is that a lot of the good midlines are all the things that have movement options, and the things that get destroyed are the things that lack any sort of movement option. And I think that that's one thing that they are trying to address with this squid jump, is they're giving a movement option to everything rather than just a certain class.
Yeah, I think that's like my thoughts on those though. For squid jump, I think there's like nothing to say. We haven't really talked about it, but I don't think there's much to add. It's just, it's another mix-up on the ledge. It's predictable, so if you miss, you're probably dead, but if you hit, it's a nice option. I don't think there's much to say on squid jump besides that. It's just a nice different option on the ledge that you have to look out for. It's there. There's nothing to add, I think.
All right, so I think the next thing we can talk a bit about is the map that we saw. And in my video where I went over the video, or like the trailer itself, I mentioned that the map looks very basic in terms of geometry. Not at all like what we expect, where there's a bunch of like obstacles and terrain in the way. It looked very basic, and I think that that is just because it is, and I hope, very, very early in the stage of development.
Yeah. Probably
Yeah,
don't want to overdo anything with like very like specific movements like ink rails maybe or something like that. They just want to keep the game simple for its first release or its first like, few weeks of release.
I mean, I think the stage flows will get more complicated. I think it's just early. Like, you can look at Leaf in the Splatoon 2 trailer and Urshan in the Splatoon 1 trailer, and they look way simpler. I don't know if I want to see stuff like rails toned down, because I think they only really add things, but I do like the geometry being more simple. While we're talking about stage geometry, though, I would love to see stages feel more distinct from each other, because I feel that was such a huge thing that Splatoon 2 stages lacked. I think Splatoon 2 stage design is the weakest part of the game. And you can look at Splatoon 1 stage design and think like, oh, fucking Salt Spray sucks, or something. And you can look at the bad ones that are really bad, but the good ones are also really good. And even some of the ones you think you hated, you probably look back and think, actually, they're all right. But
Yeah,
Splatoon
like
2 maps are just... Splatoon 2 maps are just, wow, all these stages just feel the same. And then the Splatoon 1 ones they ported all suck because they tried to port the most standard Splatoon 1 stages. And the few stages that are good that they ported, which are Pit and Ancho, were the stages that weren't very simple. Pit was the largest Splatoon 1 map, and Anchovy played around a completely different fan mechanic. It's the unique stages they ported that were the better ones. I'd even say Camp, to some example, is a better Splatoon 1 stage than most of what they ported. Because despite its issues, it's still pretty unique to play on and isn't too bad once people learn how to play on it. It's not great, but at least it's a different type of feel. The Splatoon 2 stages all just feel more or less the same.
Yeah, I think a lot of the Splatoon 2 maps suffer from trying to be versions of Splatoon 1 maps. Like, we have, like, Skipper Pavilion is literally their attempt at having the same thing as Salt Spray Rig, but with a different name. I think that they tried so hard to match Splatoon 1's style, but tried to change it enough to where it didn't, like, you wouldn't load into Skipper and go, yeah, this is literally Salt Spray Rig. But the problem is they tried too hard to mimic the style, where none of the maps feel particularly special. It is literally like a lot of them are just so basic, and it's so simplistic design in comparison to what the later Splatoon 1 maps were. If we think about like, and you mentioned it, like people thinking they don't want maps, but then they'll probably want them back anyway. The thing I always saw come up a lot was, crap, what was it? Why am I blanking on the... No, I'm blanking on the name now. Crap.
Is it a Splatoon 1 stage that wasn't ported? Museum,
Yeah.
Mahi, Flounder,
Mahi, Resort.
Hammerhead, Mahi.
Resort. People hated playing Resort Splat Zones. But you talk to anybody who's a Splatoon 1 vet, and they'll tell you that they're surprised Resort didn't get brought over. Like, that map probably could have benefited the most from not being on the Wii U. Like, anyone who played high-level Splatoon 1 can tell you that Mahi suffered from the most frame drops of any map in the entire game. It could benefit the most from not being on the Wii U.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, like I remember Anchovy was just a fucking lag fest. You could disconnect people by spamming Bomb Rush on the fans, but in this game it works completely fine.
Yeah.
I just was upset because Mahi, it was a fun looking map, but its design was also really good, even though the stage like changed with like the amount of points the enemy had. But like Silver mentioned, like it just got blown over by lag. So if it was on the Switch, I feel like they could have actually made it into like one of the best maps in the game that has to offer.
Yeah, what I want to see, because we know they're going to port maps from like the recruitment design thing. We know they're going to bring some maps, and they're probably going to change style of it to fit the like Splatoon 3 theme, or maybe they won't. It'll just be like, here's a Visit King Copolis for an old-fashioned stage, or something like that. I would like to see them just port some of the more unique Splatoon 1 maps, because if they port like, let's say 6 Splatoon 1 maps, let's say they do like 6
Or
from
towers.
each game, then
God, no.
yeah, oh fuck no, please. Like think we could have something like Flounder Heights for the verticality. You could have Mahi for the changing in platforms. You could have Museum for the rotating spinners. You could do Show again, which I guess could be from either game, but originally Splatoon 1 for the kind of fan design. Like, there's so many good choices. Even something like Hammerhead or Bluefin would fit for Bluefin's like split 2 and 2 side, and Hammerhead playing around grapes would be really fun for like Splatling players. Brushes now can roll on grapes. Dualies can roll on grapes. So many more things would fit Hammerhead in this game because they buffed a lot of things to do better on kind of graded surfaces. And then they didn't bring back the great surface map. So I think just port the other Splatoon 1 maps. Don't do the ones you already ported besides Anchovy. I don't think any of the others should come back. Just port the other ones.
Did anyone else remember how Flounder Heights was in development so long for Splatoon 2 that you could actually hack it into the game? Anyone remember that? What happened to that?
I do remember that. Yeah, and then they ended up not putting it in. I'm guessing it's just because it felt too like different. But I think that's exactly what this game needs. I don't want Splatoon 3 to feel like the same stages. And for Splatoon 2, like, I think the same thing. They can port some of the better Splatoon 2 stages, but they're going to still feel similar. Like, okay, maybe Inkblot, Mansa, Mako, Sturgeon, Reef. They're going to still feel very samey, but at least it's like the better standard stages. So even though there's like some more standard stages from Splatoon 2 and some more different ones from Splatoon 1, with Splatoon 3 probably feeling different from both, at least they kind of have those categories. Like, okay, a third of the maps are kind of bland and normally, but then the others are very different feeling, which makes the normal feeling maps feel like fine, because it's like, oh, okay, standard is unique now because 2/3 of the other maps in this game aren't standard. So standard maps are now actually kind of cool. Where in this game, it's like, all right, we have 15 standard stages, 2 good stages, and the rest of them are utter dog shit nobody wants to play on. That's Splatoon 2 maps.
All right, so I think now we can get into. We already talked a bit about, like, the next thing on our list was changes we want to see. We've already talked quite a bit about that. So I think the next thing would be, what are the things we absolutely hope they don't do? And if we already touched about a little bit of that, but the number one thing I hope they don't do is I hope they don't try to. I don't want to see them try to slowly roll things out again. I don't want to see that happen for a third time. Don't trickle weapons back to us. Especially don't do what Splatoon did and launch Splatoon 1 weapons in as DLC. Just don't do that. I don't want to see that happen again.
Yeah, I think Splatoon 2's launch was actually the weakest point of the game. It had nothing to do with balancing, just the sheer lack of content. Like, Splatoon 1 ending content, obviously it was fully finished, but had like double the content of Splatoon 1's launch. Or Splatoon 2's ending. I personally don't see them doing it again because I think it's probably a lot easier to port over like stages and weapons because they're in Splatoon 2 and it's on the same system. So I'd imagine at least it's probably easier to port things. It's mostly just the things that have to change. But in terms of like main weapons, there's probably not that much they have to do. And also in terms of balance design, I don't think they're going to change the balance of weapons as much as they are from the transition to Splatoon 1 and 2. And I really hope they don't, because there was so many changes when the bulk of things were around kits and specials that it completely fucked the balance. And the first year of balance changing was just, oh, we got to undo this thing we fucked up about mini mobility. Let's undo the heavy mobility. Let's undo the dynamo paint. Let's undo the H3 RNG. Let's undo a bit of the range RNG. All that stuff, or not range, but other blasters that deserve thoughts, I guess. But
yeah, range. But yeah. I mean, I do agree with that. I agree with both points. Like, I really don't want to see them trickle stuff out, especially like it's been it's been 5 years. Like by the time Splatoon 2 releases, we know it's 2022. We don't know which month, but it's going to be about 5 years since Splatoon 2 to Splatoon 3. And I don't want to see them like take a game very slowly and update it very slowly. I feel like if anything, they can get more benefit and more out of it by adding updates consistently and regularly to the game. Something I also absolutely don't want to see at all, which we talked about. I don't want to see any specials that are invincibles or alongside invincibles without having a significant drawback. I feel like those specials actually ruin the game, as we saw. In Splatoon 1, it wasn't as bad because quick respawn was a thing in the game, but in Splatoon 2, armor just completely shuts down some classes of weapons, like blasters, rollers, even some shooters. They cannot do much because of armor. Even though it's a time to kill thing, it still acts as a shield for the game, or for the people. So I absolutely don't want to see something like that.
The next thing I hope they don't do, along with no invincibilities, no trickling of content, is I just I don't want to see I just don't want to see restricted rotations anymore. I think this has sort of outlasted its lifespan. I think the game either needs to move towards like just letting us queue for certain things, or taking the Call of Duty approach of where you choose a mode and then people vote on a map. I think the rotation system, I think that needs to go. I think that I don't even really understand their reasoning behind it. They've tried to explain it being like, oh, that way people can practice specific maps and modes for a prolonged period of time. Yeah, I think that's just BS. I think there was something happening where they just couldn't do it or didn't want to do it. But I think the thing I don't want to see the most is I don't want to see the rotation system come back.
I'd personally like them to just do the Mario Kart 8 route where it like picks like 4 or 5 stages at random and then the people in the lobby vote and then you play a stage. Because not only is like, okay, there's enough random aspect to where every stage can get seen, so it's not just, oh, this is the favorite map out of all 20 for most people, but it also gives data on like, okay, these are the stages people like to play on, these are the stages people hate to play on. When we go to rework a stage, because they did a lot of stage reworks, now we have info on, okay, people really don't like playing on this stage. Let's fix it so that people will want to play on it. It both gives option to pick stages, and it gives Nintendo more info to make their stages better. I think another thing that I don't want them to bring back, so obviously like specials are a big thing to me, because I think specials are a huge part of what makes this game good or bad, because this game in both versions have had its mix of great and terrible specials, and I think Splatoon 2 is the perfect example of that. Because some specials, like I think Hammer, Booyah Bomb, and Inkjet are some of the best special design, not just in Splatoon, but in any objective shooter. But I also think stuff like Stingray Armor and the Bubble Blower combo are some of the absolute worst in all like objective shooter history. Like, I really want them to look at their special design and start to think of how they work. And I think, judging by the fact that Booyah Bomb and Hammer are such good specials and they added them at the end, I think they're learning more of what they should do. And there's also signs like no Stingray weapons were added after the first 6 months that shows like, okay, maybe they're learning from it. But this is when we're really going to see it, when they design the next set of specials. Are they going to fix it? Like, if they're going to be HP specials, I want it to be something like Booyah Bomb, where you literally cannot move while you have the armor. Like,
Yeah,
that's
like a
part of
significant drawback.
Yeah, because, like, Baller doesn't have that drawback, and some people think Baller is bad. Those people are delusional. But
I think
the
it's just
problem
bad
with
because of
Baller...
like,
I mean, yeah, that's a different argument. But the problem with Baller is, like, in invulnerability is, like, you get to pop it and then roll the fuck away, and they can't do anything about it 99% of the time. If you panic Booyah Bomb, you're fucking stuck there for a good 2 seconds before you throw it. Like, yeah, you have armor, but then there's a fuck ton of downsides that are exploitable, which is why people don't mind Booyah as much. Because Booyah's HP done right. That to me is what I want to see. Like, I don't want to see Baller return, even though it's not a. I don't think Baller is a bad design special, but I think it's a type of thing to where I don't want to see it, and Booyah just does that kind of thing so much better. That's the kind of thing I want to see them start to change and rework more specials like that. Hammer's another good example. It doesn't directly, like, it doesn't have HP, it blocks damage, but you can only block damage from a specific angle and a specific time. So there's downsides to it, and there's a ton of different ways you can use it. It has a rush mode, it has a throw mode, you can swing with it, you can jump swing. That's a good example of both a utility special and a simple, like, easy to use special with Booyah that are designed right. I want to see more specials with that design. Also, I'm fine with Bubble Blower, just to clarify. I don't want the bomb combo in the game, because Bubble Blower just turns into an absolute panic explosion special the second it has a bomb combo, and I think that's horrible design. Stingray is just not fun to play against at all. I don't think it ever will be, and Armor is too simple, as we talked about before.
I think in terms of specials, it's still really early for us. Like, we don't know, because, like, obviously we saw a bunch of new movement, or at least in my opinion. I feel like the special balancing, I feel like they can't get it right until we actually start playing the game with all of their mechanics increased and stuff. Because for, like, the not the crab shooting lasers, but, like, the Inkzuka shot, it looks slow, but it still looks like it has a pretty big hitbox and a pretty big width of where you can die. Like the bubble pop thing, that's really annoying as well in Splatoon 2, where they can just panic pop it, where I think Nintendo meant for it to just be you put it in a zone to deny area control. But I feel like special balancing is going to be really hard until we actually get into the game, because there could be weapons or mechanics that simply make specials not as good as they appear to be on paper, if that makes any sense.
I mean, yeah, but there's a difference between special balance and design. Like, Hammer and Booyah were shit when they started the game, but the core design of the specials was good. They just needed to tweak, like, okay, Booyah needs less armor, Hammer needs to swing a bit faster. Like, yeah, the balance things need to be fixed, but the problem isn't really... Like, when people play the game, the specials will become more balanced, but there's a difference between, like, a balance issue and a design issue. No matter how much they tweak Stingray, it's still a horrible design special, and no amount of balance changes from the buffs before it came out to the nerfs afterward is going to change that. And that's why I'm so worried about special design. Because if they design a shit special and put it in the game, it's stuck in the game forever. There's nothing you can do about it once it's introduced.
And they've never backpedaled on anything like
Nintendo
that.
just hates to backpedal. They
They've
would
never
rather
taken
add
out the
other
special.
nerfs and buffs to basically make up for their mistake rather than the mistake itself.
Yeah. Like, they could have reworked Stingray into Whale. They even put Whale in the game, and Stingray looks enough like it. But they would rather keep Ray, knowing it's a problem to the point where they completely just only do nerfs, don't attempt to rework it, and don't add it to new weapons, because they would rather not backpedal that far. That is my worry. And I think specials are just some of the best and worst aspects. If Splatoon 3 had, like, only the good design specials, its potential for being a good competitive game just skyrockets. Because I think the only real bad things with Splatoon 2 balances frontliners approaching and special design on 3 of the specials. That's it. I really think everything else is so fucking good overall. Like, there's minor complaints, but there's really nothing significant. It's those 2 things that hold it back. And we're already seeing the frontline stuff is getting changes, but it's the special stuff I worry about, because they've gotten it not where I'd like it to be 2 games in a row. They need to clean up their special act.
Yeah, it is. It's also, if they keep the way that specials work and that specials are like super prominent and super easy to get, they really cannot afford to mess them up a third time. Something that has that much influence in the game should not be like super broken and super messed up a third time if they want to keep it as easy to get as it has been.
Yeah, I don't mind, like, the special output. I think that could be adjusted slightly. Like, I think points for specials was a great mechanic to introduce. I would like the default to be closer to 190 to 200, but it depends on, like, stage design. So I don't mind the special, like, output. I think that's not a bad thing, and if you increase it a fuck ton, then I think you just drastically change the game too much. You just make it way slower, and that's why I don't want him to do that. Because specials are such a key point to approaching that it's like, if specials are like 250, 300, defensive phase while you charge specials is going to last years. Nobody wants to watch that, let alone play that.
Well, that was something I had talked about in a video of mine that I made, that I would be perfectly okay if they made specials in Splatoon 3 be high impact if they took forever to achieve. Like, think of Overwatch's ultimates. It takes a while to build, like, of course, every ultimate in that game has a different, like, generation rate, but the highest impact ults in that game take forever. And so I think that that would be a good way to do it. It's like, you can have these high impact specials in the game, just make it to where it has to be a long time before you get it. Make it to, like, have something come back, like Bubbler or Ink Armor, but make it to where everything is like 400p for it. I would be perfectly okay if it took a long time to get to the high impact stuff.
I just think that slows down the game a lot. I think the reason it works in Overwatch is because Overwatch has stuff like abilities and the game pace is slower. There's more time, the objectives are slower. So the ultimates being slower and more powerful makes sense in that game. But I don't think it does in this game. Like, I think maybe it can work, but I don't think it's the same kind of design. And I would even go as far as to say I prefer Splatoon's more fast-paced gameplay than having to wait a long time for a team fight. If this game was slowed down for special charge, I think it would just make the game have way more downtime and feel slow, where I think one of this game's best strengths competitively is how little downtime there is.
Mm-hmm. So I think the next thing we want to go into is, what are some of the changes we would like to see to weapons? Personally, I would like to see, and it's not going to happen, but it's like a pipe dream of mine, I would like to see them revert Octobrush's damage calculation back. I would like to see the damage overlapping return, but maybe reduce its damage. Or, like, allow it to happen, but put a hard cap on it, which didn't exist in Splatoon 1. Give it a hard cap, but let it come back, basically. That's my pipe dream.
Yeah, as much as I've gotten used to Octobrush in Splatoon 2 and, like, I still like playing it, I do think Splatoon 1's was better designed because having the potential two-shot, but having to be like, okay, but now you have to get closer and you don't paint as far. Because in this game, it's like, you paint fine now and your range is actually good. And I think the Tri-Slosher has the exact same problem, I'd argue. Which is where I don't like that Tri is an outranging T-Tech Slayer machine. Like, if it has to kill faster, like they did with the fire rate buff, it should have less range. And I think the same thing for Octobrush. And I'd even say the same for Clash. Like, some kind of... If it's an AoE weapon, I think it needs to be able to work to get in, but it also needs the reward for working to get in. Because right now these weapons, like, Tri is the only one with an actual reward for getting in that, like, benefits it because of the giant hitbox the other two sloshes, like, give the overall main weapon. There's not really a reward for getting super close to Octobrush with Octobrush or Clash. Clash even goes against it. So I think the design in the first game of Tri and Octobrush of, okay, yeah, you get a really fast time to kill, but you have to really work for that faster time. So do you want to risk having the bigger hitbox and slower kill time, or do you want the faster kill that you have to get closer for? I think that just works better.
I just want to see a Chargers in the game. It is hard to balance because anything that's a one-shot, one-kill will be seen as broken or unenjoyable, but I don't think it's as bad as it is, and I feel like Chargers right now aren't exactly in a broken state or an unbalanced state. I feel like as of now, but that's also due in parts like armor and stuff. But
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not sure if I would want to change with Chargers. The only difference would be like I would be fine with less paint, I would say. If that means like, because Chargers one shot, one kill, but its painting isn't exactly, it's still good for what it is. So I feel like in terms of changes for at least my main weapon, I feel like the best possible combination would be a decently, it's depending on the special, decently high special, maybe like 200 starting off. If it's like specials are like considered to be like the best specials in the game. I feel like its paint should stay as it is, considering the nerfs we got to paint. Other than that, I feel like most weapons returning. Well, Blaster is obviously getting the change that we want. It's looks like it has no RNG at all if it's not reduced. I feel like other than that, I'm pretty fine with weapons the way they are right now.
Yeah, going on chargers, I actually wanted to I wanted to talk about chargers as a whole, but briefly, I would want them to make E-liter more like Splat Charger, because I think having E-liter be a painting machine is a bad, like, overall thing. It fits this game because E-liter has a kit for zones and it has a niche on zones. But in the other game, when it's going to have a different kit that's good on other modes, it should be more, okay, give it a little bit more of its range back, but it paints the same as Splat Charger. Make them back to being similar to each other. Because if E-liter is a kit that can work on other modes and has a little bit more range, it'll be broken with the paint it has now. But if they keep the paint it has now and don't give it the range in kits, it's going to be a zones niche again. And E-liter deserves to be more than a zones niche, to be honest. My issue with Charger is that I think playing against it in terms of having to approach isn't fun in this game. In the first game, I think it was alright, but that also made Charger not fun because the kills you got were so low value because Splatoon 1 was overran by QR that activated regardless of getting a kill. Splatoon 2's counterplay is either, okay, I will approach the Charger when I press the armor button, which isn't fun for the Charger because then they hit 3 shots on armored opponents and get nothing from it, or, oh, they have a Charger, guess I don't approach and farm the armor, which isn't fun either. So I think right now the problem is the play for Charger isn't fun for either side. They need to make approaching and moving Charger more dynamic, in my opinion. For example, I had an idea for a Splatoon 3 special where, like, say you hop into, like, some kind of hovercraft outside of, like, you can't be shot at, and you shoot propulsion shots that knock people away. You don't deal damage, but you could displace them. But you still have to, like, aim and hit people with them. So this is now like, okay, if we want to approach the Charger, I have to hit these shots and it will displace them, meaning the Charger could still potentially hit shots, but it's harder. And on top of that, it's like more of a dynamic is what I'm trying to get with that. Obviously, that's like not a perfect design, but it's moving the Charger isn't free now. Armor is a free way to approach Charger. I think specials should be an opportunity, but it shouldn't completely invalidate Charger.
Well,
I think it should be more dynamic.
Though, like, if we look at, like I said, like squid jump and stuff, it's gonna put a lot more pressure on Chargers to have increased aim, and we still don't know this. We've only saw, like, I want to say 2 specials. Did we see any more from the trailer? That's
3.
outside of the
No.
Inkzuka
We just saw
3.
the Inkzuka and then what alluded
missiles
to
confirmed or
missiles.
something.
And
Yeah, so
the
there might be like specials that just completely block somebody from like shooting at you, or like basically like a better splash wall or something. Because armor, like I agree with you that since if armor's not in the game, Charger can hit people for free now as long as they have a good shot. I still feel as if though that it's still too early to tell, and I don't think Charger is as big of an impact as per se in terms of like how difficult it is to approach or counter. It's not on the same level as armor, and I don't even think it's like somewhat close, because I still think you can combat Charger with like knowing where to position, not giving them sight lines, because that's like the downfall of Charger. You can't exactly push up and hit shots if the enemy just isn't giving you shots. But I do agree, I think there needs to be some sort of, if there's not mechanics on the stage, some sort of special or like sub abilities that can block a Charger from basically sitting in one spot the entire game and you can't move them out of that spot.
Yeah, something like that. That's just my opinion on it, is to make it more dynamic between it. And I
Yeah.
also think that would help the problem of, well, other backlines can't play against Charger because they get shit on, like Splatlings and Explo and every mode that is in zones because it can't hide behind the zone and paint it. Stuff like that I think would be helpful as well. But I still think Chargers will be fine in the next game. I'm looking forward to seeing how they change them. I just hope they make the interaction between specials and Charger more dynamic, because I think that's
like
the
I don't
main
want to
thing.
see the only way to move a Charger out is with the special.
Yeah, I don't mind missiles as much because missiles barely moves Charger and it's for like a second. And if you use them on the charger, you lose value because you're only using them on the charger and not the other people. So in terms of like missile in Splatoon 3, I think there's enough dynamicness to where, yeah, I'm fine with missiles, and missiles aren't going to kill as much because of the squid roll. So I'm like, Splatoon missiles, great special for Splatoon 3, no problem with that. But I want more specials that can interact with chargers without being like that, basically. But yeah, that's my only real thoughts on that.
I think the next thing we could talk about is what we think the game absolutely needs. Not even something like pertaining to specials or anything. Anything outside of that we think the game absolutely needs. And everyone's going to immediately say something like dedicated servers, which I think is like a given. People want dedicated servers. They want the netcode to be different. But something that the game definitively needs. And I've already touched on, like, the idea that I want is I would like the map rotation system to be gone. The dedicated servers would be nice. A higher tick rate would be nice. I think one thing the game could do that would be very beneficial, at least in my opinion, is go the route that Smash started doing, where they incorporate an in-game tournament feature. If the game starts to lean a little bit more into giving the people that are trying to play more seriously what they want, which they've already started doing in Splatoon 2 by adding spectators, I think that would go a long way to just sort of slightly inch in the direction of giving us the things that we wanted and better enhancing the user experience, the viewer experience. Give us some sort of way of creating tournaments in the game. Give us a way of like modifying certain elements of private battles a bit more. Allow us to change the rules of the game so that people that want to do certain things like custom games can change it to where, like, oh, I want to play, hide and seek, but on the Rainmaker version of the map, but I want to make it 10 minutes. And you could do stuff like that. I think one thing, the thing I'd like to see the most is I want them to improve the usability and the functionality of the private game. I want them to add more stuff for us to choose and to edit and to work off of than just the game's exact own rules, but we play when we want. I want them to expand on it and allow us to actually customize things.
I completely agree. I think that a resource in-game to make tournaments is what we need.
If I'm being honest, I don't think there's anything we need. I do have some things that I have a higher priority. A higher tick rate is just something I think should be a given because Splatoon 1 has a higher tick rate than Splatoon 2. So, a few things just to list. Higher tick rate, more private battle options. For God's sakes, let us change the host or go back without having to kill the entire room because one person DC'd. For fuck's sake, it would go such a long way. I fucking can't with it. Basic things like skipping news, no rotations. I would like more of a tournament mode, but I think a good way to do it is to just incorporate the league system, but have like a league finder. Like maybe you can search for specific weapons and then form a league team with random people, not people you have to add. Like you could find someone and send a request or just have league searches like this rank requirement, play this weapon, and then search, and then people can join those lobbies, and then you can then have a way for people entirely in-game to be able to team up with each other, which is basically how you start people playing together or going to competitive. Having a function that'll actually create teams that can be used for that league battle is so much better than, alright, you can league if you have friends. If you don't have friends, oh well, good luck. I guess you're just not doing league battles.
Yeah, just like an LFG looking for group section in the game.
Yeah, I mean, you could even do it on the league page. Like, you could just do recruit for league or find for league. Like, you could literally have it be on the same kind of interface, just add it as an option. It improved the game so much. Oh, also, I almost forgot. Rank system, please.
Yes.
Fucking fix it.
Yes.
Go back to Splatoon 1's rank. I don't care.
Please.
I don't care about the people that cried on Reddit about not being able to rank up. Splatoon 2's rank system is way too much of a babysitter. It babies people way too much, and it's not a good. It's a super flawed system with the way that it functions. Even like a friend of mine, like I was talking with a coworker the other day. He has casually played Splatoon. He doesn't do anything competitive. He's not like serious in the game. But even he was like, yeah, when I got Splatoon 2, its rank system just sort of felt like all I had to do was just keep playing and I was guaranteed to go up. That's literally it.
Yeah.
If you just keep playing, you're guaranteed to go up. And
Or
that's
even if
not
they
how
wanna
it should
keep-
be.
Even if they want to keep like the rank X system, just make the rank X system the whole ranks, and please just, if you're gonna do that, at the very least, Nintendo, have an option to wait longer for closer lobby power games. Just have it be an option I can select. I will wait. Other people don't have to wait, but let me choose to wait to get better matches at the very least, because I will do that wait, and I know a lot of other people will do that kind of wait. And that way, people who want fast games can still do fast games. So at the very least, for a simple solution, I would like them to do that.
And then I think in my chat, Ron makes a good point. Allow us to have a separate mode or a separate competitive mode, a separate rank system where we can gain ranks in teams. Like not like have League as it is, where you can play like no pressure versions of the ranked modes, but give us a team rank where we can go in and start at like C- again, but you're playing in quads, and then you rank up as a quad and stuff like that. Like have a separate ranked mode for team play, where you can go in and you actually guaranteed to get matches of your skill level, rather than going into League and you sometimes just get a 1700 power lobby, and you know the other team is just a bunch of B- players that just got the game.
Yeah. I guess just anything else to add that we didn't mention so far. Just kind of any topic. I just personally, my hopes for the game is that it will be a kind of combination of Splatoon 1 and 2, and I want to see them really work on their design for things like specials and movement. And it looks like that's where we're going, but that's my main thoughts about what I want to see from the game from a competitive standpoint, is I just want to see more focus on that kind of thing. I'm overall still really looking forward to this game, and I think what we have seen so far is a very good showing. Having Missiles and the new Zuka both look like really well-designed specials. The new movement mechanics feel perfect. The new balance, things like blasters having no RNG, looks great. Like, the little bit we have seen is a really good sign. I just hope they continue to go that path.
Stick to their guns that they're showing us. Like, don't
Yes.
backpedal on these things. If you're going to show us this stuff, stick to it.
Exactly.
And I think that's a very appropriate thing. Just like, just if you're gonna go this route, like all in, no fear, just go straight into it.
Yeah.
And then I think one of the last things we can end on is: do we think it's gonna get a Testfire? And
Yeah,
I think
there's gonna be a Testfire.
I think if there are people out there that are doubting a Testfire, I don't know why you would. It's literally like the easiest promotion for the game. There's literally no downside to them doing it, other than like the data mining that was happening in Splatoon 2's Testfire. But like, it's such free promotion. Anytime Splatoon 1 or 2 has ever had an event like a Splatfest or anything, it gets a ton of viewers on Twitch. It is such free promotion that I'd be baffled if they didn't do it.
Yeah, I even think we'll get a Testfire at the end of this year. I think we're going to get a Testfire at the end of this year. I think we'll be able to try a little taste of Splatoon 3 by the end of this year. And I expect to hear more news by E3.
Yeah.
Not a lot, but a bit.
I expect E3 is probably where they will announce if they're going to do a Testfire, regardless of if it happens this year or next. E3 is probably when we're going to see another trailer, and then that is when they'll probably tell us, like, yeah, and there'll be a global Testfire happening 2021 or something like that.
Yeah.
I think Testfire is just 100% we'll get it. It's just we don't know when we'll get it.
And then, if you guys had to guess, when is Splatoon 3 launching? My guess would be is that they stick to the July formula and just release it at either at the start of summer or the end of summer 2022.
My guess is that I think they want to get it out as soon as possible because I think the game is already delayed, but that's like a theory I talked about before. I expect it'll probably be closer to Splatoon 1's launch date at early summer because I think summer is already the kind of like, yeah, they release Splatoon games in the summer by now, but I think it'll be closer to the end of May, early June would be my pick.
Yeah, I think they will release it early May, end of June. But then again, I just hope that they release it as soon as possible in 2022. I think the safest bet would definitely be early summer or mid-summer, because that's usually where they've had those release or Splatoon 2 release there. And Splatoon 1 was early summer, so I think that's just the bullseye of where they're going to release it.
All right.
All right, and then let's see here. The last thing, yeah, that was actually pretty much it. So, I guess the last thing would be, so far, just based off what little we know, what little we've seen. How are you guys feeling about Splatoon 3?
I am beyond looking forward to it. I'm really hopeful for it. I still have my concerns, but my overall thing is that this could easily be the game that really lets the competitive scene shine and overall lets the game grow in a Western audience. I really hope it is.
I think that it really is a case of the third time's the charm. This is literally their moment to show that they have finally gotten their stuff figured out, sorted out, and have something to truly show. And this is their moment to actually finally do it. And so there's definitely some, for good reason, there's some concern. But I think that this is now more than ever their moment to actually show us that we shouldn't be concerned. And they have to show us. They have to come in, they have to like knock it out of the park. Otherwise, they're just going to lose faith from the people that have been playing since the first game, and we're looking to have that experience back.
Yeah. I hope a good amount of the Splatoon 1 experience is recreated. I haven't talked about it, but just kind of, I don't know, the pace of that, the feel of that game is different. I just hope to have some of it back in this game, and I think we will. So that's my hope, that this game will be the merger of what makes both games great and will excel it from two already good competitive and casual shooters to a really great one. I hope Splatoon 3 is the masterpiece.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a masterpiece, but it definitely has to be better than Splatoon 2. If they want to really get people to be really care about it again, they have to do it right this time.
All right.
Yeah, so I want to thanks both of you for joining me. This was definitely an interesting experience. Also, Ice and I just had an amazing comeback, but but this was good. I think there probably won't. Maybe I'll try to get you guys to come back when we're closer to release and there's like a good, we know a good bit of the game actually by that point.
Yeah, I would be down to do. I would be down to do more discussions whenever we get info next and discuss that stuff. I think that would totally be great.
I think that one, any sort of like, if we get like an actual direct focused around the game, we get more information. That time we can finally just focus solely on what we've seen, because by that point, hopefully, we'll have enough knowledge of the game where we won't have to really rely on predictions, and we'll have a general idea of how it's actually going to play. And then, of course, past like the Testfire, we can do another one about how we feel about the Testfire.
Yeah. All right.
All right, so thank you two for showing up, and thanks for chilling here with me for a bit. And then
Thanks for inviting.
Yeah. And for the people that are watching my stream, both Chara and I will be uploading this as well, so if people showed up late, you can tune into the videos. Mine will probably be up tomorrow. I don't know about Chara's, but mine will likely be on my YouTube.
Yeah, mine will be tomorrow or the day after. Just depends how long I take to edit out, like more downtime bits of it and stuff. I just have a bit of editing to do, but should be out in 2 days at the latest.
Yeah, and then hopefully it won't be too much longer. E3 is in a couple months, so maybe we'll hear more then. Hopefully we'll have some sort of announcement, even if it's not the release date, because I think the release date it probably won't even announce until 2022. Maybe we'll get some sort of confirmation of a Testfire, or just
I just want more info.
yeah, literally anything. I think at this point, literally anything else would suffice.
Mhm.
But yeah,
So then I'll be anxiously waiting for more Splatoon news.
exactly. I'm excited to see where they go. I'm definitely excited to see if they can recapture the feeling of Splatoon 1. Because I talked with people from SRL, and one of the biggest problems that SRL had was that everyone kind of collectively felt like the game was not an evolution. A lot of people felt that Splatoon 2 was more of a step backwards, and it was in a lot of regards. We talked about like the tick rate going down, the servers or not the lack thereof, the net code taking a step down, things like that. It felt like the game was taking a step backwards, and a lot of them and a lot of people I know feel that way about the game. And so hopefully they can recapture the hearts of the people that they lost with this game.